I talk about China quite a bit as far as like lessons to learn and what America could adopt and emulate. There are a lot of rumors about China. There's a lot of misunderstandings and also just outright lies. It's just another normal country, just like every other country is.
I don't like that. The job that Hasan does, the equivalent of that cannot exist in China. He's an American citizen based in America who runs a small business. And the core of his business model is constant criticism of the American government and more broadly, like the capitalist structure. He gets to do that as a job in the United States. He's not going to go to jail for that. That job cannot exist in China.
So the CCP didn't pay you to say all these things?
No, but it doesn't matter.
Oh my God. You're definitely not a paid propagandist, right? I mean, he said that about Loanerbox, so I feel like we're totally justified in just flatly accusing him of being paid. I think we should speak about it like it's just an established fact, because that's what he did with Loanerbox in Israel. I think we should give the same energy. Let's go to the Hasan State Media interview. At long last, 30-minute interview with Li Jingjing.
In general, you always say like China, very positive things about China. And then there are people calling you, maybe saying you're a CCP paying you to do this. You're a CCP agent to talk good things about China. So let me ask you, why you talk positive about China so much in your live streams?
Because I think that uplifting 800 million people out of extreme poverty is an incredibly impressive feat. Being able to develop this country in the aftermath of colonial extraction, World War II, infighting, and civil war, and to become a competitive force that is slated to overtake America as in a multipolar world is very impressive. And I think we should learn from that in the United States of America. We should look to that and learn some lessons from that. And that's the reason why I always try to use China as an alternative, as an example, because I also want high-speed rail in America. I want high-speed rail in America. I want Americans to not have to fear about where their next meal is coming from, or potentially taking on medical bankruptcy, which is an insane concept to begin with and doesn't even exist in other OECD nations anyway. What I'm saying is I want Americans to wake up. And I think China is a decent example to showcase.
Hasan Piker,
Boy, I already have some thoughts.
also known as hasanabi, is a prominent Twitch streamer offering political commentary and media analysis. As a content creator, influencer, and political commentator, he speaks to young Americans like mainstream media could only dream of. His unique take on current affairs has helped him amass a combined 4.5 million followers on Twitch and YouTube. A recurring topic of conversation on his platforms is China, from analyzing China's governance and development to the international bloggers' travel boom the country is experiencing. He shares dimensions of the greater China story that Western audiences rarely get to hear about.
How does this one fold?
Yeah, they're on a different planet out here, brother.
Yo, it's got that classic Huawei vision.
Yeah, it's got a little filter on there.
Like cavemen discovering fire for the first time.
Chinese filter, yeah.
Like to be in China after being in America.
We have folding phones, first of all. Don't we have folding phones? I think a lot of people like folding phones now.
America for so long.
No problem, chat.
Oh, no way!
It's a small one.
And it's the first version of
It's
it.
the first. Wait,
Really?
Is that a Bible?
No, that's a little red book.
it is basically.
The little red book?
The little red book. It's the red Bible is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is incredible.
Hi, Hasan Piker. Such a surprise to see you in Beijing. Wow.
It was inevitable. It was bound to happen.
I know Beijing is your first stop in your whole travel plan in China. It's too early to ask, I know, but I'm just wondering what's your expectations for your China trip, and it's probably just been 2 days for you to arrive China. How's your experience so far?
It's been amazing. I haven't slept at all, but you know, I'm just carrying myself because I'm so excited. So it's been a remarkable experience thus far. But I was always very excited to come to China, so this has been a dream come true for me.
What do you want to experience the most, or what do you want to try the most?
The food, I want to see all the big tier 1 cities, but most importantly, I am super stoked that I'm going to get on a high-speed train tomorrow to go to Shanghai. So that's what I'm mostly looking forward to. That's what I've been most excited about.
Why? Why are you looking forward to visit China?
Well, Part of it is because I talk about China quite a bit as far as like lessons to learn and what America could adopt and emulate, and seeing it in real time, I think is a lot different. I also wanted to show my audience and the Western world in general that there are a lot of rumors about China. There's a lot of misunderstandings and also just outright lies, and that it's just another normal country, just like every other country is.
I don't like that. I don't like that one. I think it's just really important to remember that first and foremost, if we're going to have a conversation about China and the way that they structure society, the way that they structure the government, you would need to center the uniparty in the discussion. Like, the discussion should start with the Chinese Communist Party. There are no independent opposition parties that are allowed at the highest levels of government. Like, if you wanted to form a political party and challenge the Chinese Communist Party, they would just squash that. And they have squashed that. They just squash any substantive political dissent. Like, you're just not allowed to challenge the party. So if it were the case that the people of China were growing unhappy with the party, how would they go about expressing their dissent? How would they go about trying to galvanize an opposition movement, to incept an opposition movement to challenge the Chinese Communist Party? Like, what would their options be? They have 8 parties in the CCP. They vote, dumbass. These are not independent parties. Those political parties that operate in the Chinese government are under the direct control of the Chinese Communist Party. You do not have the freedom as a citizen of China to simply express dissatisfaction with the Chinese Communist Party. Anybody who does so at significant personal risk. They will throw you in jail. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being America-brained, but I think that democracy, for all its flaws, is the most ideal system that humankind has constructed. Maybe there's something better that could come down the line. I don't really know what that looks like, but it's exactly your America-brained. I think that if a people in a country are dissatisfied with their government, they should have the freedom to express that dissatisfaction. Number one, they should just be able to just express that dissatisfaction. But number two, they should be free to build their own political parties to challenge the party that's in power. And then through democratic process, people can elect to shape the government how they see fit. And you just can't fucking do that in China. That's a big problem. The state has complete control over the media. This person who's interviewing Hasan Piker, the Chinese Communist Party, has direct control over what she covers, over her commentary. If you're in a country like that, giving an interview to the state-run media, how can I trust that the things that you're saying are accurate, authentic? How could I possibly trust that if you're not allowed to criticize the governing party? Like, the whole thing is just fruit of the poison tree at that point. I can't trust anything. I'm sure that I don't think anybody would say that there are no perks to living in a country like China. You know, having a high-speed rail, I'm sure that's fucking fantastic. I wish I had a high-speed rail in California. I wish I could just get on a train and just be in San Francisco in like 45 minutes. That would just be so nice. And I'm sure they have some pretty strong social safety nets in some ways. But if I don't have the freedom to say that I don't like what the government is doing, I would never want to live in a country like that. Ever. The job that Hasan does, the equivalent of that, cannot exist in China. What is Hasan's job? He's an American citizen based in America who runs a small business, very lucrative small business. And the core of his business model is constant criticism of the American government and, more broadly, like the capitalist structure. He gets to do that as a job in the United States. He doesn't need to worry about being thrown in jail for expressing those opinions, for radicalizing perhaps tens or hundreds of thousands of people into his thinking. He's not going to go to jail for that. He might get stopped at an airport for 30 minutes for some extra screening, which, you could argue that that's not great, but he's not worried about going to jail for doing that. even during the Trump administration. I'm sure he doesn't like the extra scrutiny that he's getting from this administration. You know, JD Vance personally talked about Hasan Piker, but I guarantee you in his mind, he's not thinking like, oh, I might end up in jail. That job cannot exist in China. There is no such thing as like a Chinese social media pundit who spends 99% of their time criticizing the Chinese government. That doesn't exist. It's not a thing in China. It will throw you in jail. That's a big problem. Whatever perks they have, high-speed rails, that's a big problem. They are one of the most repressive governments in the world. North Korea is probably more oppressive or repressive in terms of like squashing dissent. North Korea is just on another level when it comes to that kind of thing. And then who would be number two, if not China, the number two most repressive government in the world? Iran would be up there. Russia would be up there. I don't know if Russia would be more repressive than China. I already said North Korea. North Korea is definitely worse. But the Chinese Communist Party exerts a significant amount of control over what information is allowed across the various channels. And they certainly exert a lot of control over how the government itself is structured and how it operates. Just an insane amount of control. They have an insane amount of control, direct control over the industries that operate within their boundaries.
And I know that, but one, experiencing it for myself is good, and seeing it for myself is good. And then two, showing it to other people as well, I think will be a good opportunity. As
journalists who travel to different countries and talk to local people, I noticed there's a huge gap. Like, there are a lot of misconceptions from the West in general about Chinese people. I think I really appreciate your effort trying to help a lot of people to see, hey, they're also.
Cuomo did 9/11. I like that name. Says people only focus on China's authoritarianism because they are a transitional socialist state. No one focuses on all the American-sponsored puppet dictatorships because they're capitalist. Bless your heart. Bless your heart.
So just normal people, there are things going on that the news are not reporting. But I'm just wondering, in general,
They'll give up that power. That's what I think. They'll give up that power one day. It's just a transition. They they have to imprison, dissidents because it's a transition. It's just a transition. They're gonna give up that power at some point. They do it for the good of the country. They torture and imprison people and throw them in work camps because sometimes you got to use a heavy hand early on.
Your observation, what are the common misconceptions that people in the United States have about China?
Where do I begin? I mean, if we're going to talk about the government, there is a tremendous amount of misinformation. Oftentimes, one of the things that I think our press does to our adversaries, which is really strange, especially when we consider China being such a significant trade partner to America. 30% of manufacturing is coming from here. Nonetheless, the State Department officially designates it as like a competitor or foreign adversary. We will look to things that every other country does, our allies do, for example, and we will assume that it's like somehow sinister or totally different or totally exaggerated when it's coming out of China. One example I always think about is like there was a new museum, I think it might have been the Revolutionary Museum that was launched in China. And there was a New York Times article. It was like, China greatly whitewashes its own history in its museum. And it's like, first of all, every museum is going to show the best parts about their history. It's totally normal. We do that in America as well. So there's that. And then there's just like outright misinformation. And I think for a lot of people, or for a lot of the press,
you can go to museums in the United States and find exhibits on things like the institution of chattel slavery. It's true that Trump has tried to exert and in many cases has exerted some control over like what is displayed in specific museums that are under the purview of the federal government. But you can find plenty of museums that cover the ugly parts of our history. You can find museum exhibits on atrocities committed by the U.S. government during like the labor rights struggle and the Red Scare and like the civil rights stains that we have on our country's ledger. Like, you can find that shit in museums. Just find me a single museum exhibit in China that is even just tepidly critical of Mao. Just give me one example of that in the entire country.
Yes, in general, they're just not very intellectually curious about what is actually
You want me to find you one? Yes, find me one that is critical of Mao. Pun Pun, show me.
going on here. I see this in my own experience. Like, there are a lot of analysts I talk to, very smart people,
Google it. I don't know. Do it. Find it. Just look it up and find it, bro.
very well-educated people. But when it comes down to it, when they want to analyze China, they have this horse blinder on, where they just think, you know, why are they doing these sorts of things? Oh, China's about to collapse any day now. And one of the best examples I love to use is the ghost cities. Development style here is very different than places like America or liberal capitalist nations. And they build housing with a long-term plan in mind. And it's been incredibly successful. But at the time when the housing units were being constructed, Western analysts looked at that and said,
did you not watch The Three-Body Problem? There's a lot of criticism there. Did he write that? Hold on.
oh, this is not for people to live in. They're just doing it because it's a speculative bubble and it's going to collapse at any moment. And now you look at those ghost cities in 10 years in the future, from when those articles used to come out from the New York Times and many other places, these are cities with tens of millions, sometimes 20 million people living in them. I never want to have that kind of, I never want to stunt my own analysis in that way. And I feel like a lot of people do that partially because they want to cope, and partially because it's just all they've known, and they've just never really been interested in understanding that there are different ways of governance out there beyond what we see in the Western world.
So this is your first time in China. I watched
Yeah, I mean, like brutally authoritarian. I mean, I don't know if
some of your videos analyzing China, and I would say most of your videos
I don't know if people are unaware of that.
talking about China are pretty good. As someone who has never been to China before, how did you manage to understand what's really going on in China?
I grew up in Turkey, so I think I have a different attitude about different modes of governance in general. And I also grew up in that region, so I have an understanding of like what America likes to do to its adversaries or countries that it declares enemies of the state. And therefore, I was already skeptical about State Department narratives in general. I don't know, I just did some reading. and I think that the Chinese development especially has been so undeniable that as long as you're even a little bit interested and don't just read foreign policy magazine analysts, you can very quickly realize that no, like this is not the backward state that people have presented as. And I think more and more people are also coming to that conclusion as well, because in the age of the internet, especially with like how accessible China is, it's fairly difficult for people in the West to maintain this position that this is a scary country, almost like a hermit kingdom, right? And that's just not the case. There's a lot of businessmen that come in and out of this country. Surely there are cultural differences, there's differences in governance, but ultimately it's just like,
I mean, I feel like we're kind of glossing over the differences of governance here. I mean, these are pretty profound differences. Daz Vidani with $2, dog. This might be worse than the Tucker in Russia. I think it's certainly on the same level, and it could be worse. I mean, I didn't see Tucker go to these kinds of I mean, I don't know. Tucker was pretty bad at glorifying Russia.
it's a fully developed nation state that is constantly in touch with the rest of the world, and maybe even in some ways, in more meaningful ways than the American government is in touch with the rest of the world.
I think I wanted to talk more like your career, because I think your career is very unique because you live stream on Twitch, a gaming platform, but talking about politics, and you gained millions of followers, and from the young generations in the United States. Actually, at least from my experience, people who told me they are your fans, they're not just from the United States, they're from like everywhere. So, I mean, what motivated you to talk politics on Twitch? And live streaming hours every day is a really exhausting job. So
yeah, it's not the best medium for sure. I played video games and I was already at the Young Turks, another news network, and I wanted to get better off the cuff, because at the time,
I actually think it's the best medium for his brand of politics.
when I was at the Young Turks, I would write all my scripts, and I just basically thought, I already play video games. This is an environment and an audience that is very diverse in their opinions, but unfortunately, all of the commentary side of it was very right-wing, like incredibly right-wing. And I thought that the gaming space deserved better political voices, and I was already invested in it. So I just strapped on a camera to my PlayStation while I was playing Fortnite and just started talking about politics with a bunch of my other friends who were also journalists and activists themselves, talking about the exact same issues that I'm talking about today. And slowly but surely it evolved from there. But that was my starting point.
I see you're often, I mean, people from different groups attack you, put like different labels on you, attacking you. I think on our way here, I was seeing someone on Twitter calling you a liberal, and someone call you a spy, someone call you, people even from the leftists, socialists also criticize you. So I mean, how do you identify yourself? What would you prefer to call yourself? And how do you see this attack?
Yeah, he said China is gay as hell. Yeah, it's just normal here, you know? Austin was on the apps. I feel like he put Austin in danger by doing that, by the way. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if they would arrest him because I feel like that would be a PR nightmare for them. And I think they're obviously trying to maximize their PR from this trip, as one does as a authoritarian nation state. But for him to say, yeah, China's gay as hell, it's just like normal and gay here. It's like, okay, well, add any gay scene to a movie and then let's see, you know, how far it gets distributed in China, right?
From different groups.
Well, I say I'm a leftist because I think looking at the material conditions and lack of class consciousness in America, I feel like leftist is the broad categorization, because a lot of people who might have socialist tendencies don't even realize it, because like the mass political movement in the country is liberalism. So most people self-identify as liberals, even if they do actually think, if you ask them directly, like, do you think you should have more autonomy in your workplace? They would say, yeah, of course, I like that. Do you think that the government should create a base level of material equality for all workers unconditionally? They say, yeah, I love that. That sounds like a great idea. So that ranges everywhere from, even in a country like America.
Do Chinese citizens have a lot of direct control over the companies that they work for? The answer to that is like a resounding no, right?
With the capitalist social democracy all the way to, you know, Marxist-Leninism. And so I just say leftist. But yeah, I mean, it's not a secret, I'm a socialist. And as far as people on the right attacking me, that's a given. Liberals sometimes criticizing me, that's also a given. In most circumstances, they refuse to identify the same exact problems, and they think I'm being antagonistic to the left flank position in the country, which is the liberal Democratic Party. And as far as the broader leftist movement.
Does he even deny that? I feel like that's his brand. Like that's how he markets himself. You go to him if you want to see antagonism towards the Democratic Party. Is he even denying that label, or
goes, which is fairly tiny in the United States of America, liberal Democratic Party. And as far as the broader leftist movement goes, which is fairly tiny in the United States of America, that's also a given. Leftists always fight with one another. Socialists have historically always identified marginal delineations or ideological differences and have made that a massively consequential problem, even at moments when we have no power whatsoever.
Have those labels?
That's certainly true.
Those attacks ever bother you? Because like from like my experiences, when I decided to go on social networks, and
he's gonna do the thing where he's like, no, I thrive on their critiques. But he is one of the most sensitive political commentators. Clearly gets upset consistently when there's criticism of him. He doesn't really even engage in any kind of debate anymore. He very, very rarely directly engages with the substantive critiques that they have of him. Zondo says, why don't you just arrest the people that criticize you? Yeah, why don't you just throw them in a work camp? It's like,
and talk about like what I saw in China, and I saw huge amount of attacks and racist comments and I mean, from everyone.
He was literally going to debate Kirk. Well, there's a reason why I said he very rarely directly engages. I didn't say never, but he very rarely engages in a direct conversation with the people that criticize him. And he's found these myriad ways to deflect criticism, and he's conditioned his audience like so well. Actually, you know what? Let's do a little quiz. I want you guys to type out, there's like 4 or 5 like main deflections that he uses. I want to quiz you guys though. Like what are the ways that Hasan has conditioned his audience to deflect criticism? You're obsessed with me is definitely one of them. There's a genocide is definitely one of them. Why are they criticizing me when there's a genocide going on? He will label people like a destiny orbiter. He'll accuse people of getting their talking points from Destiny, or they'll use a Zionist smear. They'll be like, oh, that's just a Zionist. That's like an ultra Zionist. You can just like dismiss what they have to say. They're saying the same thing as, you know, X, like, oh, that they're saying the same thing as like Asmongold. They have the same opinion as Asmongold. What does that tell you about them? He certainly does. Those are like the 5 like main ones. But he has these like tried and true kind of deflective like mechanisms that he employs. And from what I've seen, he very rarely he does all of that to just avoid the substance of the critique. He'll also do like literal gaslighting, you know, like, oh, this person's just crazy. They're obsessed. They're crazy. I guess that's kind of like linked with, they're just so obsessed with me. Either which way, I don't know if this is a conscious strategy that he employs in terms of the deflections. I think it's more likely that he's kind of workshopped like a few different deflections over the years, and he's landed on the ones that he's landed on because he discovered that those were the most effective. Like, you can just dismiss everything that in their community or in his community. The logic is that you can just dismiss the substance of what somebody says by slapping a particular label on them. Obsessed, right wing, Zionist, Destiny orbiter, you know. And that's how they manage to just like not address the things that people say. And of course, like all of that like kind of fell apart during Collargate because it was just so comically obvious that he was lying about that. And so the normal deflections just like weren't working because people could see with their own eyes certain things. But even during that time, just to show you like how strongly he's conditioned his audience, they were still like trying to do those things. You had people like Taylor Lorenz tweeting out, oh, there seems to be a coordinated attack from chorus creators, and maybe it has to do with Israel. I don't know exactly what she said, but it was pretty consistent with his normal deflections.
Because like from like my experiences, when I decided to go on social networks and talk about like what I saw in China, and I saw huge amount of attacks and racist comments and maybe from everyone. So it bothered me for.
That's the other thing too. They'll accuse you of like being a racist or more specifically like anti-Muslim. That's another deflection that Hasan has used in his community. Like
for a really long time, until one day I realized what I want to do is tell the stories I saw, and I shouldn't be. You won't shut me up. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I went through this transition of like mental struggles. Mm-hmm. But you are much more influential. Like, but I would consider you're a really influential influencer. You see like even bigger amount of attacks from everyone. Mm-hmm. So have you ever been through those same mental struggles?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the beginning, I always couldn't understand it.
He's going to do the thing. He's going to be like, I thrive on it. No, I welcome criticism. He's gonna do it. Watch.
I was confused. Like people will be like, "Oh, you're this or you're that," when it was very clear that
No, this is bullshit too. Because like he was being intentionally provocative. That's another part of his brand that's been consistent since day one. He has always tried to. He's tempered it a little bit. You know, he used to be I would say like a bit more edgy in the past, but. On starting day one, his whole thing was, you know, I'm a radical. My opinions are going to be radical. I'm going to give you the most extreme takes. I'm going to package it in the most hyperbolic or extreme way. It was like it was a deliberate attempt to be provocative. And so for him to frame it as like, in the beginning, I was confused. It's like, I didn't understand why people were so upset when I said America deserved 9/11. It's like, no, who is buying this? Of like, anybody who was even loosely familiar with Hasan, like, who is buying this?
I didn't believe the things that people were saying. But at this stage in my career, I understand that it just comes with the territory. A lot of people would rather attack the false characterization of someone rather than the actual argument that they're presenting in an effort to make it much easier to strawman someone. It is what it is. I think truth usually does end up prevailing in the long run. So I just stay the course. I'm a very stubborn person. And I think that is my secret sauce, if you will, where I just continuously hammer on the same issues that I care about. And eventually people will find their way to arriving at those conclusions. And I've seen that.
What? Eventually, everyone will see that I'm right. It's okay. Bazzi with €5. Is that what that is? FYI, Li Jingjing is a CCTV state media handler that has managed other Western propagandists specifically to cover what happened in Xinjiang. Is that how I said that right? I knew that she was a state propagandist. I found a bio on her before and I couldn't find it for some reason when I looked it up just now.
That throughout my career, whether it be on Israel, Palestine, or even whether it be on liberals in America, getting very frustrated with their lack of options within the Democratic Party, experiencing failure after failure.
Xinjiang, is that how you said?
They inevitably come to the same conclusions that
Xinjiang. Okay.
I've been yelling about for quite a while. So you just got to wait it out. Because at the end of the day, if you are true to yourself, true to your values, you can sleep comfortably at night. And also, people will, more often than not, come to the same conclusions, no matter.
Well, it sure seems like the electorate, at least in 2024, was very turned off by like his brand of politics. Z King with $5. Wow, this really cool guy, looking really cool in the interview, speaks like he paved the way for the left in America on his own with zero help at all. A little bit, maybe.
No matter how long it takes.
You just mentioned many Americans are feeling maybe hopeless, seeing less of options. So what are the struggles that some like young generations in the United States are experiencing? I think many people in China.
Kamala ran as a centrist, you buffoon. I'm not really, first of all, what does centrist even mean at this point? Or is it bait? I might be getting baited. Don't do it. Don't do it. Am I getting all right, fine. You know what? We're going to resist the stun lock.
China would want to understand.
Affordability, lack of hope in general. Everything is very costly. Wages are relatively stagnant. There's no good jobs. Everything is so expensive. You go to college and you take on $100,000, sometimes $150,000 in student loan debts because college is not free, which is ridiculous. And then you have healthcare on the other side, God forbid. You take on $150,000 in debt to go to college. You can't get a job that is applicable to your degree. So you just take whatever job you can because now you have to pay those student loan debts. And then if you lose that job, you lose your health care. So there are very real fears on that front. And then also housing is incredibly costly in the country. Half your wages are automatically going to your rent. And people just don't think, especially young people, don't believe that they will ever retire and certainly not retire.
For the median family, I don't think that would be true. Half of the median American family, half of their income goes to their mortgage or rent.
A reasonable age. And they will never be able to own a home. So the notion of the American dream is completely lost. So
I think it's like, isn't it like 70% of Americans own their home or something like that? Some crazy amount.
A lot of people feel entirely hopeless.
Entirely hopeless.
Yes.
That's a pretty strong.
Oh, for sure. I think young people, like people my generation and younger, if you're under the age of 35, these are the pressures that you feel on a daily basis. There are very few people who are like, nah, everything is actually really great. I know so many people that are working in careers that previously would have been thought as like high profile professional careers, highly specified jobs with a lot of training and a lot of experience. And a decade in, they feel stagnant. These are supposed to be like high earning positions, and yet they have so much discontent, and they feel like things are too expensive.
Do you think they can make a change with the current circumstances with the US government or policies?
I always have to assume.
Census.gov, according to the census.gov, the median percentage of income spent on housing costs was about 21.4%. If he's speaking directly to like young people who are going to have lower incomes, then I imagine it would be closer to being true in that case.
That change is possible, or rather inevitable. Otherwise, everything I'm doing is for naught. So there is always an opportunity to make change. It's just, you just have to keep on pushing, and you have to continue the struggle. And especially in a place like America where there is no...
I don't think, listen, I wouldn't categorize his life as, like, I don't think he's struggling for the cause. I wouldn't use that particular descriptor to describe his role in the revolutionary spirit.
There is no labor militancy even. There's not a lot of organizing, at least even at this point. And it's been completely destroyed. Those networks have been eradicated in this country by force, where capital is won. It's very difficult, but we still...
Bogsy with $2. Oh, so socialism means no house? Are you doing the Hasan meme?
keep going.
What do you see the China-US relations right now? And do you think will eventually at a war? And how can we make people from those two countries understand each other better?
Dialogue is good. And I think the more Americans realize that their conditions are not as great and that their leaders are lying to them about how it's currently the greatest country on the planet. I mean, it is the wealthiest country on the planet, and yet there is nothing to show for it for the average everyday working class person. And the more they recognize that, and the more they look to other countries and communicate with the people from other countries directly without any sort of media filtering, the more they realize that like everyone is the same. They want a roof over their head, they want a hot meal, they want clothes to put on their back, they want a better future for their children, they want upward social mobility, they just want an easy life, and they want a meaningful place on this planet. They want a good job. And that's the same whether you live in China or you live in the United States of America. And we have a lot more similarities and a lot more closeness with one another than we have differences. So dialogue, I think, is one of the best ways to do it. But like I said, as conditions worsen in America and people look to other countries, even in China, and they realize that maybe they weren't right about the way they perceive, everyday Chinese existence, the more they will think that they were lied to, hopefully yearn for something more from their own governments.
I saw China has been one of the very frequent topics in your videos, in your live streams. Like you analyze the governance of China, China's development, but in general, you always say...
Like it's quite clear that Hasan very explicitly is, he says his goal is to increase class consciousness, to like wake people up to the dire nature of the conditions that they live in. But there does not appear to be any kind of serious appetite for revolution in this country at all. That's a very kind of like fringe position. I think most people, especially like young people, most people just want more certainty when it comes to employment. Most people want housing to be cheaper, the future prospect of purchasing a home. They want to feel like that's within reach, and like reliable infrastructure. I think most people would have preferred the peace of mind of knowing that there's no risk of them going into bankruptcy for like medical costs and these kinds of things. There is an appetite for like strong social democratic policies. There's just no real appetite for revolution in this country. There's like a mismatch. Like if things were really as desperate, like if America was really crumbling and desperate in the way that Hasan suggests, surely there would be more of an appetite for like really dramatic, transformational, even revolutionary change in this country. And I think the cope that they come up with to explain why that doesn't exist is because, oh, that's because of like propaganda, manufacturing consent. And I think that's how you really understand Hasan's mindset, because I think that's the image he has of himself. Like, it's his job to like unplug people from the fucking capitalist matrix. And if you just get out there and you agitate for change enough, and you wake people up to their class consciousness, then you can kind of manufacture a revolutionary spirit. But there have been leftists that have been trying to do that for decades in this country, and it just doesn't seem to really catch any steam.
Like China, very positive things about China. And then there are people calling you, maybe saying you're a CCP, paying you to do this. You're a CCP agent to talk good things about China.
What was that? Bro, the vibes, he's like, there's something about the vibes that he's giving off during this interview. This like cool guy thing that he's doing, which just does not match with the reality, because again, he's just very clearly a very sensitive guy. Like, I'm convinced Hasan is a very sensitive guy. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm really not. I'm not saying sensitivity is a bad thing. It's just it's a human thing. But he's very fragile. This man is very fragile. And yet he goes on these interviews like this and he puts off this like too cool for school kind of vibe.
So things about China. And then there are people calling you, maybe saying you're a CCP, paying you to do this. You're a CCP agent to talk good.
What was that? Do you guys see what I'm seeing? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting hung up on that. That was not the most convincing dismissive laugh. I just want to say I wasn't suspicious of that before, but now I kind of am.
Things about China. So let me ask you, why you talk positive about China so much in your live streams?
Because I think that uplifting 800 million people out of extreme poverty is an incredibly impressive feat. Being able to develop this country in the aftermath of colonial extraction, World War II, infighting, and civil war.
Didn't they lift 800 million people out of poverty by moving further away from a completely centrally planned economy? Wasn't that how they did that?
And to become
by switching to just basically like state capitalism?
Competitive force that is slated to overtake America in a multipolar world is very impressive. And I think we should learn from that in the United States of America. We should look to that and learn some lessons from that so that we can at least try and incorporate some of those lessons. And that's
like brutal repression of dissent? Like
the reason why I always try to use China as an alternative, as an example. Because I also want high-speed rail in America. I want high-speed rail in America. I want Americans to not have to fear about where their next meal is coming from, or potentially taking on medical bankruptcy, which is an insane concept to begin with and doesn't even exist in other OECD nations anyway. What I'm saying is I want Americans to wake up. And I think China is a decent example to showcase, even though there's a tremendous amount of propaganda. Ultimately, the results are there, and it's very difficult to argue against said results.
So the CCP didn't pay you to say all these things?
No, but it doesn't matter.
Oh my God. Of course, she circled back to that question. You're definitely not a paid propagandist, right?
I mean, people will say it regardless.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, I'm pretty sure.
Honestly, that made me suspicious. Like, I'm not making any claims right now, but that whole exchange was very bizarre to me.
Straightforward. Like, I criticize the Chinese government as well, just like I criticize the American government when it's like worthy of criticism. It's just that I think we have to be honest and
careful about what you say. Hold on. Wait, hold on.
He didn't pay you to say all these things.
No, but it doesn't matter. I mean, people will say it regardless.
Yeah.
But I mean, look.
I mean, he said that about Loaner Box, so I feel like we're totally justified in just like flatly accusing him of being paid. I think we should speak about it like it's just an established fact, because that's what he did with Loaner Box in Israel. And so, I think we should give the same energy. We should just treat it like an established fact. Dazvidani with $5. My guy wants a multipolar world, but would be the first to tantrum when prices go up because USA isn't guarding shipping lanes. That's true. 100%.
Look, I'm pretty straightforward. Like, I criticize the Chinese government as well.
Please, can we hear some of those criticisms right now during this interview? Would you feel comfortable expressing any of those criticisms right now in this moment.
Just like I criticize the American government when it's like worthy of criticism, it's just that I think we have to be honest. And the problem is a lot of people would rather be dishonest and heighten negative aspects of foreign countries while simultaneously totally understanding why.
There are so many contexts in China where they would literally throw you in jail for telling the truth. I just find this part of the interview a bit nauseating.
Why certain things happen in their country. So it is what it is. But they're just not used to someone being like, no, I don't think this is as consequential as you think it is. They just immediately assume like it's very black and white. There's no nuance. There's no nuance thinking. If you don't automatically present China as a foreign adversary, they go, oh, you that's crazy. I've never heard that before. But instead of being like
if he were to just say right there in that setting that Mao's policies during the Great Leap Forward led to tens of millions of people dying of starvation due to inept governance that led to a famine, they would cut that interview off immediately, and he would be at serious risk of some kind of punishment for that.
A little bit curious about why I'm saying that. They automatically just shut it off.
Today is your second.
Like if he just like accurately described what happened in Tiananmen Square, they would end the interview and he would potentially end up in jail.
Second day, third day in Beijing.
Second day.
In Beijing.
Yeah.
The first thing you did was go to the flag raising ceremony, Tiananmen Square. How was your feeling?
It was interesting. I mean, it's not for me personally. I'm not a very patriotic person in general, but what I found fascinating is that people from all around this massive country were traveling, sometimes for an entire day. I talked to an elderly woman there who said that she traveled for a whole day to come to the flag raising ceremony, something that happens every day in Tiananmen Square, and yet it was packed. And I find that fascinating, and I think it's because, especially for older Chinese people, I think they just have a lot of pride because, you know, they have seen.
I think he's talking out of both sides of his neck here. He's claiming like, well, I don't really personally understand patriotism because the world I imagine is one without borders and blah, 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 blah. But it's very obvious that he's like a China stan. I think he's literally said like, yes, I stan China. I think he's literally said those words. So I just don't think he's being very truthful, either with himself or outwardly truthful.
This country dramatically changed over the past couple of decades, and that gives them a sense of pride. And I wish we had something to be more proud about as well in the United States.
I think there's so many things that we could be proud of in this country. It took me some years, I will say, it took me some years to cultivate a sense of pride in the country that I reside in, because my political awakening was like during the Iraq War. And so I just felt constant shame for being American. But there's so many things we can point to in history, of a rich history of really brave civil rights leaders and movements who faced all kinds of oppression, and like the forward progress that we've made on so many issues. I realize that we're in a bit of a backsliding moment right now, but even Trump 2.0 can't erase the significant progress that we've made in this country in so many respects. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool that I live, especially me in Los Angeles, but like that I live in a country where that influences so much culture globally. Like what we do with the arts here in media and television and film. I think that's pretty fucking cool. I think the fact that we are the melting pot of the world, and that is our superpower, like it is specifically because we are the melting pot of the world. And we have attracted talented, intelligent people from all over the world. And that is the reason why the companies that are started here have been so successful. That's the reason why we've been important innovators in so many different respects. And that's pretty fucking cool. You know, we're the first country to fucking really do that and at this level and have this kind of level of success. I mean, I guess you could talk about like the Roman Empire a little bit, but I think we are more diverse than the Romans at their peak of multiculturalism, right? Dazvidani with $5. To be clear, Hasan and his types, they would hate the actual effective civil rights leaders like MLK. They'd see them as sellouts. Oh, I agree 100%. And it's funny because they invoke MLK so often with the white moderate thing, which is so misunderstood in my opinion. But MLK and especially like the civil rights leaders, I mean, civil rights as a movement existed for fucking decades before the 60s. And the civil rights leaders during, you know, the FDR era were super pragmatic.